Timeline of New Zealand's links to Antarctica. Map of the Ross Dependency. The part of Antarctica claimed by New Zealand is shown. 1838 to 1840. French and American expeditions led by Jules de Monts, Urville, and Charles Wilkes and John Sack, a Maori traveling with Wilkes, becomes the first New Zealander to cross the Arctic Circle. 1895, the New Zealander Alexander von Toolzelman becomes the first person to set foot on Antarctica at Cape Andre. 1899. February, a British expedition led by Cartons Borchievic, including several New Zealanders, establishes first base on Antarctica at Cape Andre. This expedition becomes the first known to winter over on the continent. 1902, Scott's Island, formerly Markham Island, was discovered and landed upon by Captain William Colbeck. 1910, Robert Falcon Scott leaves for Antarctica from Port Chalmers. Scott's party later died on the return journey after being delayed by a blizzard.
1911 to 1914.
4 New Zealanders, H. Hamilton, A.J. Swear, E.N. Webb, and L.A. Weber, are members of the Douglas Madison's Australian Arctic Expedition. 1923, the Ross Dependency proclaimed on July 30th as a British territory entrusted to New Zealand.
1928.
U.S. Navy Rear Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd leaves Dunedin for the first sea-air exploration expedition to the Antarctic. Byrd overflew the South Pole with pilot Bert Belchman on the 28th and 29th of December 1929 to match his overflight of the North Pole in 1926. 1933, New Zealand Arctic Society is founded. 1946, New Zealand joins the International Whaling Commission to help oversee whaling in the Southern Ocean. 1949, first publication of the New Zealand Arctic Society quarterly journal, Antarctic. 1955, in August, the New Zealand government decides to establish an Antarctic base as part of its contribution to the International Geophysical Year. 1956, McMurdo Station is established. Construction of both Scott Base and Amberson Scott South Pole Station started. 1957, January 20th, Scott Base established in Ross Dependency. 1957, New Zealand Geological Survey Antarctic Expedition of 1957 to 1958, named the Borchievic Glacier. 1957, Hallett Station, south of Cape Andre, established as joint New Zealand-United States operation. 1958, January 4th, Edmund Hillary, leading an expedition using farm tractors equipped for polar travel, arrives at the pole, the first expedition since Scott's to reach the South Pole over land. Part of the Commonwealth Trans-Atlantic Expedition. Hillary was the first New Zealander to reach the South Pole overland. 1958, New Zealand Geological Survey Antarctic Expedition of 1958 to 1959, named the Mountaineer Range. 1958, United States Operation Deep Freeze starts based in Christchurch. 1959, December 1st, Antarctic Treaty signed with other countries involved in scientific exploration of Antarctica. 1959, New Zealand Department of Scientific Industrial Research established Antarctic Division. 1964, January, Walter Nash becomes first Prime Minister of New Zealand to visit Antarctica. 1964, Hallett Station destroyed by fire. It is not rebuilt but used as summer-only base until 1973. 1965, the first flight from New Zealand to Antarctica made by Royal New Zealand Air Force C-130 Hercules aircraft. 1968, Mary Derby becomes first New Zealand woman to visit the Antarctic. 1969, New Zealand Geological Survey Antarctic Expedition of 1969 to 1970 visited the Scott Glacier and named Marble Peak and Surprise Spur. 1969, November 12th, South Pole visited for the first time by women, 4 Americans, an Australian and New Zealander Palma Young. 1969, Vanda Station manned for the first time. 1970, Antarctic Amendment Act comes into force. 1972 to 1974, first solo voyage to Antarctica by New Zealand-born yachtsman and author David Lewis. 1974, joint New Zealand-France expedition makes first ascent and descent into crater of Mount Erebus. 1974, Antarctic Museum Center opened at Canterbury Museum in Christchurch. 1975, Prime Minister Bill Rowling had a formal proposal made at the Oslo meeting for the Antarctic to be declared a world park. 1976, Thelma Rogers of New Zealand, the first woman to winter over on Antarctica. 1977, New Zealand proclaims exclusive economic zone of 200 nautical miles, 370 kilometers, which provides for the zone to also include the Ross Dependency waters. 1978, 21st anniversary of Scott Base. 1979, the Mount Erebus disaster. A New Zealand DC-10 crashes and 257 people die. 1980, New Zealand is a signatory to the Convention on the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources, which comes into effect in 1982. 1982. January 20th, Rob Muldoon becomes the first sitting Prime Minister of New Zealand to visit Antarctica. 1982. Antarctic treaty nations meet in Wellington to discuss the exploitation of Antarctica's minerals. 1987. Closure of the Scott-based post office, reopened in 1994. 1995. Closure of Valda Station. 1996. Antarctica, New Zealand established on the 1st of July to manage the government's interest in Antarctica. 2006. October 2006 to January 2007, New Zealanders Kevin Bigger and Jamie Fitzgerald become the first people to walk to the South Pole without the aid of any supply dumps. Their plan to parasail back is abandoned. 2007. Prime Minister Helen Clark and Sir Edmund Hillary, aged 87, travel with official party to Scott's Base to celebrate the 50th anniversary of its founding. 2007. June 4th, first New Zealand Antarctic medal awarded to the geographist Dr. Fred Davey. Timeline of New Zealand's links with Antarctica.